Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a conversation about the ADL, Volume 1. Before we discuss the ADL, we have to discuss the reason for the ADL. Why is the ADL necessary? What caused the ADL to become an absolute need to the Jewish community? Why was it important that in 1913 a group of Jews decided to create an anti-defamation league to protect Jewish people? Let's take the titles off of race and ethnicity, and let's just talk about an idea. What if you were smart enough that every single revolution, every single world upheaval, and every single empire, even from the time of Persia to this very day, you were able to have an idea, to be part of those takeovers, to be part of those upheavals, and to always wind up on the top? Imagine if you knew that Napoleon was going to beat another rival country, and that sooner or later that country's wealth, that country's monetary system would no longer be functional. Imagine if you understood that in advance, because you were the ones who were going to pay Napoleon. Imagine if you could figure out that if you could overthrow one government, that the new government, you would be in a leadership role, in a financial power position. Imagine if you knew that in advance. What would you be called? You'd be called a very smart person. A very smart person. What if you weren't by yourself, though? What if it was a group of you? In fact, a nation of you. You'd be called a Jew. The Jewish community protected itself with its wisdom, with its understanding of how to finance financial war. They were the financer of most wars. They backed Napoleon. They backed Napoleonic wars with gold. They understood usury. They understood the capacity for people to need money and to now charge interest. They did that in Germany. They understood the power of government and how certain things had to be overthrown in order that totalitarian control could be kept over certain areas. They did that with the Bolshevik Revolution and the killing of the Tsar. The Jewish community has been very culpable in the areas of world politics. Why? Because they're an old, ancient community. Because they've never had an army since the time of Solomon. Because they've had to use their smarts where they couldn't use their muscle. And they figured out ways to survive. And so their collective resource of knowledge of how to control the world through finance is something as old as Judaism itself. As old as Judaism itself, a people had to be diverse enough to understand how to control things without having the weapons and the army to do it. Well, in 1913, there was a Jewish businessman who raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl. That's right. And he had to stand trial for that. And ladies and gentlemen, he was guilty as sin. Very guilty. And where he was being charged, they had the death penalty. But some people put in a call for the governor. Some things were done behind the scenes. old practices from a group of people who know how to make that thing work on the back end. And the governor changed the death sentence and took it away and reduced it to life. The fix was in, but people weren't sitting for that. They went and got that old Jewish businessman, they dragged him out of the jail, and they lynched him. They killed him. They weren't going to allow any backroom deals to take away justice. This is when the Jewish community said, wait a minute now. We've got to find other ways to protect ourselves. And here comes the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League realizes that the problem really isn't that people are going to walk up to us on the street or burn down our synagogues or attack our children. The real problem is that people will put out ideas that will cause us to have to look at ourselves. They'll put out ideas that about historical truths that might be taking place that are factual. They'll put out ideas that won't necessarily affect all of us. Yes, there'll be some Jews who are doing that, but what about the ones who are not? What about the rest of us who are simply not part of that? We're just regular people raising our children, raising our kids, but because some of us are doing insidious evil, all of us are being painted with the same brush. So the ADL realized that they have to be a voice to stop the spread of anti-Jewish sentiments. It should be called anti-sentiment, not anti-Semitic. It's anti-Jewish sentiment, which is what the ADL is trying to fight. This is Volume 1, the history of the ADL, who they are, what their purpose is, and especially what they're trying to hide.